All right, kia ora everyone, and it's your host Logan for the Stromcast Down Under. I've got two very special guests with me today. Firstly, Will from Leviathan Nutrition, thanks for joining us, and a big Paul as well. So we're going to get into quite a few topics today. Mainly, I think that the interest for, especially in New Zealand side, is risk mitigation and the more popular bodybuilding gets. That I want to dive into that a bit. But I think where we could probably start, Paul, is just a little bit of your background, what got you into the sport. I know you had a bit of a break in between and then you started really picking things up over the last 5 years. But yeah, I'll get you to introduce yourself and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'm Paul Barnett. People know me as Big Paul. I've been a bodybuilding nut my whole life. Started when I was a teenager. I guess I was more of a gym bro, power builder, bodybuilder in my 20s. Worked with a couple different trainers, but when I was younger, I had the pleasure of working with Dante Trudell. I don't know if you guys know who Dante is, but yeah, Dante. Yeah, when Dante used to train people and before he got famous and had a protein company, I was like, I found him in a newsletter at the back of a magazine he used to sell. I think it was Underground Muscle was the name of it. I don't remember it, but I found Dante, and then I remember it was like $300 a year for him to train me. And so I worked with Dante for many years, learned a lot from him. He was kind of the OG of HIIT training and also kind of just being more intelligent with safer use. It's funny because like a lot of the stuff you hear now with safer use, he was talking about 25 years ago, like in also using supplements like astragalus. And as far as I know, he was the first person that talked about it.
He was.
Yeah, I think so. Like a lot of the liver support supplements and stuff, he really was like the first guy out there. So I learned a lot from him. And then life happened. Ran a business. I was a CEO of an IT company for the last 15 years, had kids, took 10, 12 years off the gym, got fat. Shit happens. And then I kind of forgot about bodybuilding and went through a divorce. And obviously I got to get back on the market. So I have to look good again. I can't be a fat guy, be single. So that was my motivating factor to get back into the gym. It wasn't like I was completely absent. I was playing rec basketball and doing jujitsu and shit like that. But I kind of had lost track of bodybuilding and lost interest in it while pursuing my career and raising kids. But then I got bit by the bug again. I was just like, you know what? I got back I took a 10-year break from PEDs. So I was completely off of everything. Probably did the dumbest thing you could ever do and quit cold turkey.
Yep.
Came off, and I'm sure my hormonal state was horrendous when I got back into the gym. I was estrogen dominant and low test, typical 42-year-old guy stuff.
Yeah.
And I got on some TRT and then just kind of went from there. I started seeing progress in the gym. I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do a bodybuilding show and see what happens. And then I just started competing again. Worked my way back up, won a regional show and did my first national show. Got in the finals though. I just missed my pro card in my first national show. And then this past summer, I won my pro card. I won the overall, and won the super heavyweights both. It's the only time in my life I've ever won an overall at a show. It was at a national show. So that was really a cool experience. And I think kind of my claim to fame was I got back in the gym. My first show was 185. 3 years later, I competed as a super heavy at 250. So I put on,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, I put on 70 or almost 70 pounds of stage weight in 3 years. Now, it's a bit deceiving because I was big in my 20s, right? I was almost 300 pounds in my 20s, but I kind of had to get all the fat off and then work my way back up. It was really like starting over from scratch again. It from start to finish, the project really, I started back in the gym at 43 and then got my pro card at 50. So it took me 7 years really to kind of get back.
In that first prep, because I've watched you for a while, you talked a lot about some mistakes you made and probably pulling down too hard. What do you think the biggest factor or biggest mistake you made in that period?
I was sort of a victim of my own work ethic. And I find sometimes I prep a lot of guys. I was coaching guys even when I wasn't bodybuilding. I've been coaching guys locally and off and on for 30 years. And I've done hundreds and hundreds of preps for people. But I think once in a while you run into the guys that just work too much. I was that guy. If you told me I needed to do 30 minutes of cardio, I'm doing 40. If you told me I needed to eat 2,500 calories, I'm going to do 2,300 calories. If you tell me to take 50 micrograms of T3, I'm taking 75. It's one of those things where I feel like if I pushed harder, I was going to get a better result. And then it was just kind of a runaway freight train. And I see it once in a while in preps where their metabolism will just run away and they end up flat and stringy looking on stage. And I think that really at a local bodybuilding show, you'll see really 90% of the guys are going to be two types of people. They're going to be the guy that severely over dieted and comes in stringy and flat. And then you're going to have the dude that looks like he's 8 weeks out. Right. Yeah. You get both. It's very rare that you see somebody that nails it at a local show. Usually if they nail it, they're a national competitor. The guy comes in full and hard, they're going to be a national competitor. So I just overdid it, man. I too many fat burners, too much cardio, not enough food, and it was a shit result.
And are you with the same coach since then?
Yeah, I've been with Justin Harris the entire time. And Justin took, he blamed himself for it. But I have a really unusual metabolism. My metabolism is very high. I was eating, on my high days going into the show this year, I was sometimes eating 2,000 grams of carbs. Wow. Yeah. But what works for me, if you guys have worked with competitors, everybody's unique. You can have frameworks of what works, but everybody's unique. It's like Justin described it to me one time, and I think this is the best description of coaching and prepping people. It's like surfing. If you gotta stay on the wave, man, you gotta ride the wave down the middle. If you try to force it too much one way or the other, then you end up flat on your face. My degree's in computer science. I'm a very formulaic person. I like data. I like having a plan for everything, but there's just some things you can't plan for. You got to react and see how. If it were up to me, I'd have a spreadsheet with my entire next 12 months mapped out, but it doesn't always work that way.
I think as well as like, even as yourself, no two preps are the same. Like I've competed for a decade and I've never had the same prep. Like this last prep, I think we carved up from Tuesday, and we'll saw some photos of me, and we were doing 1,200 grams of carbs a day and burgers, and then I was still flattening out, and I was like, shit,
that happens.
Can't eat more. You just can't eat enough. And then other preps, it's like I only need half a day of carving up and I'm full. So it's just, every prep's different. It's weird.
Yeah, it's very weird. And this one was an especially weird one for me this year. I usually end up losing 15, 20 pounds, something like that. That's a typical prep for me. I weighed the same the day I stepped on stage that I started my prep, 250. I was exactly the same. And I still weigh 250, although my body composition is nowhere near what it was on prep.
When maybe we get into like the beginning phases of prep, because everyone's sort of different. Like I hear people, they'll do their off-season blast and then they get straight into a prep. And then some people will do a blast and then a bit of a chill period of a cruise and then they get into a prep. What's your approach to that?
It depends on the timing. Generally, I like to do an off season, take a cruise, and then go into prep. Just have a period of time where you can get healthy, have your body ready to go. Because prep is a lot of stress on the body. I want to make sure that I am ready to go and ready to push. And a lot of times I'll start tapering up the PEDs around 20 weeks out. That's sort of what I do. It's sort of a soft start to the prep. Like I'll be a little more detailed with weighing and measuring my food rather than eyeballing stuff like you do sometimes in the off season. Put a little cardio in, start tapering up the PEDs a tad, and then really the gas pedal starts to get pushed down around 10 to 12 weeks out. Yeah. That's kind of been my approach to it. Now this year, I had a short off season, so I really couldn't do an off season. Like my show was like at the end of November, basically the beginning of December. And I had to start prep in March. So there was only 3 months in between. So I just cruised. Makes sense. The entire time. Yeah. It didn't make sense for me to try to push and do an off season. And honestly, this is the first time I've ever, I think, grown into a show. It's never happened to me in my entire life. And I think taking that break, having my body fresh, I never really got fat between shows either. I think that was a key thing. I kept lean. I was in single digit body fat at the start of my prep. I think on a DEXA scan, I was in nine and some change.
Yeah.
On a DEXA scan. And then I ended up like at 6 on stage. High fives, lift 6s. I don't recall exactly. But if you do that, you can eat more food. You can do less cardio, take less fat burners. And I think the net result a lot of times is better. Like I think that was like the huge difference this year with me. Like I didn't have to drop that 20 or 30 pounds. I stayed lean. Now, if you don't have size on, you got to push up at some point. We all know that, right? But I think that was what kind of the culmination of years of work this year kind of just set me up for success. I was able to eat more on prep. My cardio never got over 30 minutes. I don't think my calories ever got below 3,500 on 3,200, 3,500. I carb cycle, so, run high, medium, low days, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. And I never ran more than 60 micrograms of clean on prep. Didn't use Tren this year at all.
Yeah.
It was just Test, Primo, and Masteron, and then added some Winstrol in the last 2 weeks. And I think because of that, I was able to net a better result at the end. And look, I was healthier. I was able to stay fuller. I was able to stay bigger. And I think that was a big mistake I made when I was younger, is getting too fat in the off season.
Yeah, I think you start chasing the scale too much, and you're not, John Jewett probably is the one I look at now who's got probably the best approach. Like he's very...
Yeah, I like John a lot.
Yeah, he's, to the extreme of over-analyzing his body, but, he puts, what did he put on? 12, 15 pounds of stage weight?
Yeah, John's incredibly smart. I talk to him now and then. Yeah, he's incredibly smart. Yeah, Justin, my coach, his approach for the off season, we want to eat as much clean food as we possibly can without getting fat. If your weight is going up, if you're eating more food and you haven't gotten fat, there's only one possible outcome, and that's that you've added more lean tissue. So that's the approach. Now, I think a younger bodybuilder, you're going to need to be a little more aggressive, but as you get to be in the more advanced stages, like how much size are you really going to put on from year to year? A couple pounds.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it behooves an advanced bodybuilder to that. And you just, as you get bigger, your metabolism gets faster. Like now my issue is I have a hard time eating enough food to keep the weight on. Like I've lost weight really since my show, and it's because I just can't eat enough to keep the fucking weight on.
Yeah. And you would be the type that I'm very similar. Like if I miss a meal, I lose weight instantly. Like I'll drop a kilo, which is like 2 pounds.
I'm the same way.
Yeah. And
I also think too with the PEDs, I think like there is a time and a place where you need to push the gas pedal down, but you have to be strategic with it. Like I think guys get very impatient. And there's only so much muscle protein synthesis you can stimulate in a given period of time. So like my thought process is I want to live the majority of my year on compounds that are well tolerated, that I'm going to be the healthiest one, because it is, as we know, it's a long game. You got to be able to stay on the stuff for 7 to 10 years to get enough size on to actually compete as a pro. That's what it takes. I mean, people don't want to hear that, but that's what it takes. And if you're blow your organs out, if you're in kidney failure and, you have an enlarged heart, by the time you turn pro, you're never going to be able to earn any money as a pro. So you sort of have to strategically put, like if I'm going to run something, it's a risk versus reward assessment that you do. I look at it like I did security in IT. There's always a risk versus reward assessment. If I'm going to take a riskier compound, there better be some reward that I can't reap from the less, say, a safer compound. So like, for example, if I'm going to run something like Anadrol or Tren, I know that there's specific, unique things that they both do that I can't get from other things, but I want to only use those in limited duration and keep my exposure to those types of drugs to low, and spend the majority of my year on bioidentical things like test, GH, insulin. I know everybody freaks out about insulin, but if you're smart with it, if you can do math, you can do it reasonably and be intelligent, and then just keeping yourself healthy for the majority of it. We know contest prep shit gets fucking crazy. That's the time to press the gas pedal down, usually. And the off season, a lot of times the training and the food are going to do the work. So doses tend to be more aggressive, and compound usage tends to be more aggressive on prep. At least that's how I do it. I don't know what the right answer is. I spend the majority of my off season on either test, primo, and GH typically, and then run moderate doses, I would consider. And then the gas pedal gets mashed down on prep. I did get aggressive this year on prep. That was the most I've ever run on, but it was.
In terms of like blood work and, the health side, obviously you've got like a really good circle around you who all are about risk mitigation. How often are you checking blood work throughout the year, and what's your kind of...
You can get too obsessive with it. I mean, I think there's some people that are too obsessive with it, but every couple months, I like to get a baseline when I'm coming out of a cruise to see where I'm at. I like to test it when I'm at peak doses to see where I'm at, so I can compare. And if for some reason, like if something's feeling off, then I'll go in and get other. And it's not just blood work. I mean, I've seen guys with perfect blood work that have severe LDH and they don't know about it. That's not something that's going to show on blood work. You need to go get an echo done every year or two. You need to get a calcium CT scan done every year or two to make sure that you don't have any plaque buildup. I've run into multiple guys that have plaque buildup. It might behoove people once in a blue moon to go get a liver ultrasound done to make sure that you don't have any, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And it's tons of guys I see with NAFLD, ton of bodybuilders. They don't even know it.
Yeah, and I think
that doesn't always show up in a blood panel.
No, and the problem with people when it comes to like risk mitigation is that they're normally doing it when they have a problem. They normally go, I start implementing things when there's an issue. Like myself this year, I ran a cruise at the start of the year. End of cruise, my EGFR was 58, which was bad. But then end of prep, it was 96. So I went through a whole prep and improved. And, the only thing that I really took was Leviathan's kidney support. Maybe we can get a dive into, what are the more important markers to look for. For myself, I always say to people, like, blood pressure should be number one. Kidney function, your cholesterol, like HDL, LDL, are kind of the basis of what you should be looking at. But what's your kind of view, all of like what markers people should?
Well, I look at it from, once again, it's risk mitigation. I mean, we're in a risky sport. If you're going to compete at a high level, there are times that you're going to have to roll the dice. That's just how it is. But if we look at what the most common killers of bodybuilders are, it's generally cardiovascular events. That's probably going to be at the top of the list. Heart attacks, strokes, aneurysms, clots. Those are typically the things that are going to kill people. That's the thing that will make you drop dead tomorrow. Chronically, kidney disease is probably the second biggest thing. I rarely do you see guys die of liver-related diseases in bodybuilding now. And I mentioned, keeping an eye on the liver. That's more for a performance thing. The liver is extremely resilient. We know that, but if you have insulin resistance and a fatty liver, you're probably not going to be able to grow that well. So that's more of a performance thing. But I would say I would start with cardiovascular health first, keeping an eye on your lipids, because all PEDs skew lipids to a certain degree. We know that. Keeping an eye on blood pressure, that one's an easy one. You can just get a blood pressure cuff and check it daily. I have all my clients do that. I usually have my clients get a blood glucose meter and keep an eye on glucose readings. And, you can get too obsessed. Like I get guys that get too obsessed with the glucose meter. It's sort of the canary in the coal mine, the way I look at it. If I see fasting glucose levels rising, it's maybe time to go get an A1C or a fasting insulin test done to see where we're at, to see if there's any insulin resistance. But that's pretty easy to correct, right?
I've heard some crazy things from coaches with like blood glucose. I measure mine. I think it's important. But, I've heard coaches say, measure it in the morning. And if it's not this range, take some insulin before you do cardio. And I'm like,
it's so dumb.
It's just, put yourself on hypo while you're on the stairs.
Yeah, people overthink it. I mean, honestly, I just look at it as a canary. Really, it's more of a performance thing for me. As the off season goes along, one of the big things I see that limits growth towards the end of the off season, everybody thinks that the anabolics fade off, but I think a lot of it is just from stuffing all that food down, running high doses of growth hormone, a lot of times you just become insulin resistant at the end of a bulk, and people in then body composition starts to take a shitty turn. But what I've found too is like there's like guys that run continuous off seasons too. They tend not to net a better result. I feel like that you almost have to have a good hard cut once a year. That almost nets in a better result. What I was saying, usually the guys that are the best bodybuilders are the guys that compete every year. The guys that make the best progress. Yeah, I mean, and you come out, you think about it, you come out at the end of a prep, gastric emptying is going to be at an all-time high. Insulin sensitivity is going to be at an all-time high. This is just anecdote, just speculation. I would assume that probably myostatin is going to be low coming out of a prep. You're just in a primed position to grow coming out of a prep. And usually that's when you see the majority of growth is that 6 to 8 week period post show where people rebound.
Lighter and fitter as well, so you can train harder. Like there's so many things that happen at the end of the prep. Like I think the issue with a lot of people with end of preps is, say you've done an off-season blast, then you've got into a prep, and then you're doing another push-up after a prep. Yeah. It's like, well, suddenly that's 40 weeks that you've put the pedal down. So I'm big on sort of dropping straight down to a cruise and then, using food and everything else. But it depends on,
I do it a little bit differently, man. And I've tried it both ways. Now, and then sometimes, this year coming out of my show, I pulled down to a cruise. I was just worn out after my prep. But I think sometimes what I've seen is like, I'll back people off of all the toxic shit. We'll taper off the fat burners. One of the reasons why I don't like going straight into a cruise after a show is I think sometimes you end up having a huge hormonal rebound and rapid fat gain. A lot of times people, they'll end up with a big estrogen rebound after the show. They come off the fat burners cold turkey. Their metabolism crashes. Usually what I'll do is taper off everything over a 4 to 6 week period of time. I'll try to get them off the fat burners within a couple of weeks. We'll come off the orals and toxic stuff like Tren right away coming out of the show, but I'll just leave a little test and Primobolan and maybe at like half what we were running on contest prep. Yeah. Push the test back up, take that 6 to 8 week window, get a good rebound, put some size back on, let appetite settle back down. And I usually get aggressive with the food coming out of a show. Sometimes I reverse people, sometimes I don't. But if I can get away with it, I'm going to get aggressive with the food coming out of the show. Because I think a lot of times people just end up cheating anyway.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They just add the calories in anyway.
Yeah, they just end up cheating. The hunger, I forget who it was that says it, but Grayling wins every time. You can get Grayling's undefeated, right? Right. Yep. Your hunger is going to overwhelm you. So I'd rather them fill up on good food, put on a good amount of lean size after the show. You're going to be severely glycogen depleted after a show anyway, usually. Then somewhere around that 6 to 8 week mark, then we pull back and do a cruise and get ready for an off season most of the time. Now, like I said, that's individual. It depends. Some people come out of shows and they're a fucking mess, man. They just hold water. They look awful, and you got to be a little more conservative with the food. But it really just depends on how they respond. But I found that a lot of people can catch rebounds post-show if you're intelligent with it. And a lot of times I'll see that health markers will improve even with staying on I don't know, like that rebound that I had where I put on like 40, 50 pounds. I think I ran something like 500 tests and like 300 primo or something like that.
That's nothing really.
Right, right. I mean, coming out of a contest prep, I think you're most often going to see blood markers improve with that. Now, once again, it's subjective. There's not a one size fits all formula, but that's generally what I.
Yeah, and to be honest, that would be most people's cruises. when you're saying those that.
Trust me, I've gotten aggressive with doses. I mean, I got up to on this contest prep, I got up to 3 grams total. That was the most I've ever run.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
maybe that's why I grew into the show.
Yeah, well, that's true. But I think, like, in terms of compounds you use, like, it may sound crazy to people, but it's not really. Like, what I see crazy, especially in the UK scene, I see it a lot, is the overuse of fat burn. It's like, I've heard pros use 180 micrograms of clean, and I'm like, that's insane. Like, if you're needing that to get in shape, there's something wrong.
Well, I think and this is just, once again, speculation, a lot of the damage and the health issues that you see is from fat burners and diuretics on contest prep. That's just You can look at it, man. Like, think about it. Like, when was the last time you heard of a power lifter or a strongman dying? Right, and
it's been a while.
It's been a while. And those guys are running fucking Anadrol and Halo going into.
Yeah, and they're definitely not eating as clean usually too.
No, they're not eating.
They're bulking on McDonald's, all that stuff.
No, they eat like shit. They don't do cardio, and they're taking the harshest drugs. So really, what's the difference between those guys and bodybuilders? It's contest prep.
Yeah.
And all the crazy shit you're doing on contest prep. Like, I think a lot of the heart arrhythmias maybe have to do with the overuse of stimulants.
Yeah.
Potentially.
I would say so. I think the one thing I've seen a lot of lately, which has been a bit weird in the last 2 years, is this rhabdo case that, so many athletes have come out with rhabdo. I don't know, Will, if you can comment on it, but from my side, I feel like it's something to do with ARB use and potentially other medications that they're using that can cause rhabdo. But it seems weird, like, this, I can't remember his name. I think it was Elliot or something. It's pulled out.
Yeah, Elliot.
Yeah, he just got that too. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that seems really odd to me. I mean, isn't rhabdo usually from like overtraining? Like you're people doing CrossFit and stuff, like they would get it more occasionally.
Yeah, it's usually overtraining.
Yeah, it seems strange to me.
There is I'm sure it's an ARB or something. There is some literature on certain cholesterol medications that can potentially cause an increase in getting rhabdo. And maybe it's the case of these coaches are getting people to use too much of these medications, and then on top of, clean contest prep and training so much that just gets
just a walking pharmacy. I mean, for every side effect, you have like another medication that you're taking and all that stuff. I mean, that'll tend to add up too. And usually there's better practices you could be doing.
Well, maybe,
statins have been associated with rhabdo.
Yeah, statin. Yeah, okay. that's what it was. Yeah.
Certain antipsychotics and Caber, I think, may be associated with it as well. And, and certain amphetamines are associated with it as well, too. So, like, if guys are using Adderall or even overdoing ephedrine, potentially,
be
contest prep.
Potentially all of them. Potentially they're doing all of them. But I think it's, you've had it 4 times. I saw that Elliot has had it. It's like something you're doing is causing
he had a series of blood clots as well.
Crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So young as well.
Yeah, which, that's another concern that bothers me too, is like you see a lot of guys hammering tamoxifen at the end of prep. Now, I have used it at the end of prep. If you have some gyno or stubborn fat deposit or something that you need to get off, it can be beneficial in that area. But if you look at I think the number one side effect from using tamoxifen is blood clots.
There you go.
If you think about it, if you're dehydrated, you're in a state where you probably, like, I think a lot of guys end up with electrolyte imbalances from all the, they're hammering you think about it, you're hammering a shit ton of water.
Yeah.
And a lot of times guys are drinking filtered water on top of it. You're flushing all these electrolytes out. I see tons of dudes that end up hyponatremic.
Yeah.
Not only do they end up hyponatremic, they end up hyperkalemic on top of it because they're taking an ARB, which causes potassium retention on top of it. So you're drinking 2 gallons of filtered water with taking an ARB, and then you end up with potassium retention and low sodium, and you end up with these crazy electrolyte imbalances. Throw a diuretic on top of it, and then have some blood clots from your tamoxifen use, man. That's just a recipe for having a fucking pulmonary embolism or a stroke or, throwing a clot in your heart. Elliot's lucky that he didn't die.
Yeah. Very lucky. Yeah, because he's heavy as well, so it's compounding effect of everything on top. I mean,
I've seen the clots before too, like a huge just a huge warning sign. If you get a guy that has water retention on one side of the body and not the other, that is a massive red flag that there's a potential clot. A lot of times they seem to start in the legs, the lower legs. You'll see they'll start in extremities.
I think that's pretty common.
Yeah, and then they break loose and they end up in your lungs or up in your. And also, dudes gag veins with their gear. too, and end up injecting. We've all done it before.
That's crazy.
You get, so there's all kinds of stupid that happens at the end of contest prep. But I mean, clearly he's a massive dude. You can look at the guys that are, you can see the dudes that are running everything. You can tell they just have a different look to them.
Yeah, you're not. What is he? 25, 26, and
he's super young. That was the weirdest.
In 260 on stage. That's it's a recipe for disaster. But
look, if you're smart with things, you can be aggressive. If you're sticking with, if you're keeping an eye on things, and you're running safer compounds, and you're being smart about it, you can be aggressive. I think guys forget some of these drugs that they are taking for preventative measures, that they forget that these have consequences as well.
Yeah.
I've seen tons of dudes with hyperkalemia from telmisartan. I've seen guys have weird issues with water retention from telmisartan. And I'm not, telmisartan is a fantastic drug, but it does have,
but it's not always
effects.
Needed. And
it may not be the right choice for you either.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue is there seems to be this view that everyone needs to take it. And it's well, if your blood pressure is okay and you're monitoring that, do you need it? A
lot of times I'll the high blood pressure in the off season. A lot of times I'll see, and this is an issue I run into with a lot of guys. I see that they're eating way too much salt. They're not getting enough potassium on top of it. And a lot of times, if you just fix that, I think, if I recall correctly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Will, but I believe it's a 3-to-2 ratio of potassium to sodium that you need for the sodium potassium pump to work properly.
Yeah, that's
right. If I recall, but a lot of guys are not eating enough potassium and then eating way too much sodium on top of it.
Yeah, typical diet. I mean, the only thing you're getting is sodium. Pretty much, it's very rare to find a decent source of potassium. So
I've been using, and I picked this one up from Dr. Dean St. Mart. I've been using light salt, which has the perfect ratio of 3-to-2 potassium in it. I've been using that on my. Now you do have to be careful using an ARB because of the potassium retention. So there's something that you have to keep an eye on. Another thing too is guys let their estrogen get way, 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 way out of control in the off season. And, if you have a 300 estradiol, more than an ovulating woman does, you're going to have all sorts of water retention, which is going to cause blood pressure. I'm not saying bury your estrogen. I'm just saying keep it closer in range.
Yeah.
There are some benefits to having higher estradiol. There is some cardiovascular protective action and kidney protection, but if it's making your blood pressure,
your body gives you signs. So I don't know, Paul and Will, if you're the same, but for me, if my estradiol is too low, I'm oh, my elbows are a bit sore, my knees are sore. But there's these signs that I'm going, it's probably a bit low. And, even in the bedroom as well, you can say, well, that's not working.
Yeah, I think, for me, the worst thing is the libido crashes whenever my estrogen is too low.
Well, the opposite. When it's high, you have good sex drive and your dick doesn't work. That's the opposite end of it.
Yeah.
So really, you want to try to keep it in range, really, or at the top end of the range. Unless at the end of contest prep, you're going to bury it, but that's just for a short period of time. So it's just being more intelligent with paying attention to stuff like that. There's a lot you can do through diet and through keeping it out, and compound choice too plays a factor, but water retention really is the big issue for high blood pressure. And that's mediated through aldosterone and sodium retention. And certain PEDs are going to promote more mineral retention, like DECA and Anadrol, shit like that. And that's where an ARB will come in, because it's going to help address the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone loop with the stimulation from the androgens. But it's not always the androgens. It could be water retention from estrogen. It could be water retention from eating too much sodium and not enough potassium. So these are other things that people don't consider too. So I've seen guys that can't treat, or it could be just CNS stimulation where your resting pulse is too high and you have vasoconstriction and pulse is too high. You can treat it with you can pull the androgens down, or you can treat it with a beta blocker or something like that. So there's many different pathways for high blood pressure. It's not just Telmisartan is not a panacea of fixing blood pressure like people think. It is. I'm not discounting it. It's a great drug. I'm on 20 milligrams of it. I also am on a beta blocker as a preventative measure. You know, it must. You know, I hear guys just coming straight out of the gate with 80 milligrams, which is probably not smart.
That's crazy.
I mean, that's what they get people that are in heart failure.
Yeah. And if you even touched it, that's
just, you know, bro, lay off the Anadrol, keep your estrogen in line, and you know, and stop dumping salt on everything. That might fix.
That's normally the case. They're running Deca and Anadrol in high test, and then they're wondering, what's going on? Why am I already?
Yeah, and your estradiol is 300, and it's twice what an ovulating woman is. You know, so like I don't know where this notion came from that the super high estradiol is of some benefit. Like it's wacky to me. Like
it's weird. It's definitely creeped his head up. Like I can understand you don't want it super low, but
no. I'm not, and that's not what I'm saying. There are benefits to keeping it in range, but like, and I see TRT doctors talking about it. I'm like, where the fuck are you? There's not one study that shows that this is
I think
a valid thing.
I think the issue is people view it as like a ratio to test, but it's not a ratio to test.
No, there's no studies that show that.
No, especially TRT doctors that talk about keeping this percentage ratio to your test level, and it's like, well, your body doesn't work like that. It doesn't know.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's you look at the symptoms and where you're at, and if you feel well, I mean that's ultimately what matters, I guess. I don't know, but I have had tons of people come to me for consults where I've been able to fix blood pressure by just getting estrogen in range and getting a little more potassium in their diet, being a little more careful with the sodium, and being better with the compound choices, and then we can get that blood pressure back where it should be. Now, some people just have a genetic predisposition to high blood pressure. I've been on blood pressure medicine since I was 19. Right?
It's always going to be that. Yeah. Well, maybe we get into a bit of like your side and kind of what got you into the supplement industry and where you see yourself set yourself apart from other products. Like, I guess, Paul, to give you an understanding, I've used so many, like trained by JP, supplement needs, so many different health supplements with no real benefit to blood work. And then, you know, I was like, okay, I'll give Leviathan a go, see what happens. And his kidney product's the only one that works. So maybe we can start there and what the difference is between what you put out to the market. So I think a lot of people get confused with astragalus, and, you know, I know Dante was kind of the one that brought it out, but not understanding what is the product in astragalus that's actually beneficial.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, my background's in chemistry, and that's my degrees and everything. I always was fascinated by, especially like organic chemistry, like how drug chemistry works, all that. So whenever I started a supplement company, that was a big part of how I would formulate products, just trying to understand how they work and stuff. Back in 2019 is when I was trying to formulate like a kidney support product and, you know, reading up on the astragalus and everything. I mean, just in general, you think of like herbs, people think of like turmeric, right? You know, it's something that has all these benefits, but there's generally a class of compounds or a specific compound in every single herb, you know, whatever that you're talking about that has most of the benefits. So it's like whenever you're looking at turmeric, what's responsible for most of the benefits that people are talking about is curcumin and, you know, their bioavailability issues and all that. So with astragalus, you know, it's not really any different. So I did digging and, you know, looking at studies and everything. And there are different astragalosides. I don't remember. There's like 8 of them or some, you know, astragaloside 1 through 8 or something. But astragaloside 4 was particularly the one that has the most research. Most of the research has been like rodent studies and stuff of how it offers benefits to the kidneys. You know, it's just the most, whenever you want to look for a good astragalus extract, it is standardized for astragaloside 4. You know, that's like the golden standard of having a high quality astragalus extract. And something that Thomas kind of, whenever he looked into it further, not all astragalus extract even contains astragaloside 4. And the ones that are high in it only have like, I think 0.1%, you know, at most. Most kidney support formulas will have like 6 to 8 grams of astragalus extract. So, times that by 0.1, and that's what, like, I think 6 milligrams. So even if you have like a very high quality extract, you're going to be needing to like, 5x that dose to get, like a 25 milligram yield. So what we did is I just sourced actual astragalus 4, 25 milligrams. I don't even remember how I came up with that dosing of 25 milligrams. I did a lot of like backwards calculations and stuff, but that's what we went with. And that's what has had the most, a lot of people have used our astragalus 4 and kidney support and have great results. There's been people with GFR readings like the low 30s that, they've been able to get it up to 50 and so on and so forth. And we have a couple of people they would actually get their cystatin C reading, and it does also show an improvement just because cystatin C is more expensive to get the blood test for. And a lot of people don't know that, you have to specifically ask for it and all that. So, but we do have a couple of those showing that improvement. I think Thomas also said that astragalus won't really show that increase in cystatin C, but astragalus 4 will. So, again, it's most of the benefits are going to be coming from astragalus 4. That's, of course, that's the key thing in our kidney support product. It's also helpful because you only have, we do like a four capsule serving in that. But, if you have like 10, 15 grams of astragalus, you're going to be doing, 15 plus pills per day. So it makes it more convenient also, but it also makes it a more potent product because of that. Astragalus 4, it has a little bit of issues with like bioavailability. So we also have chitosan, which is, there's some research that shows that paired with astragalus 4 boosts the bioavailability. And also it's chitosan, how it's pronounced. Chitosan itself does have some research in just showing benefits in kidney function. I think they're also in studies. So, even that ingredient alone does have a little bit of a benefit. But the other ingredients we have in kidney support are more just antioxidant function. A big thing that will impair kidney function is, oxidative stress and oxidative damage, that sort of thing. So that's another barrier of protection whenever you're supporting it with antioxidants. Like NAC can also be helpful for kidney support in that way, just because it is a powerful antioxidant on top of like the liver function benefits that it offers.
NAC is pretty amazing. There was a push a few years, what was it, a year and a half ago? You're probably more familiar with this, Will, but the FDA was trying to yank it off the market to make it a pharmaceutical.
Yeah, that was 2020, right?
Yeah,
that was NAC. Yeah, because we had it in our IR up until 2019, and then they put on the advisory list. So we had to switch it out of that product. And I think, what did I bring in then? I think I put in Arjuna after that in that product. And we just kept it in there. But yeah, they swapped it out. And they're kind of doing the same thing with NMN now, which is something that boosts NAD levels, which last kind of 2 years they've been doing that. And it looks like they're going to get that looks like that's coming off of the FDA advisory list soon too. So I don't know. We'll see whether any ingredient that they put on those lists, though, it's a good way of telling you that those ingredients work, because
they work.
They're trying to make some sort of prescription medication so they can profit off of it too. So then there's always going to be ingredients that, they're going to be going through that with.
Yeah, NAC is one of the ones that actually works. Yeah, I'd heard that about astragalus 4 before. That's interesting. And I guess that's why people take, I'm just hypothesizing here, that's probably why they have to take really, really, really high doses of astragalus to get any benefit from it, because there's such a little amount in it.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't really know most, if you're buying from Amazon or something, all the ingredient panel is going to say is astragalus root or astragalus extract without the actual standardization of astragalus 4. A good portion of those just generic astragalus roots don't even have astragalus 4. So it is definitely something that you want to keep an eye out for.
Yeah. It's interesting how many pharmaceuticals are actually developed from plants.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, curcumin, they have a few like anti-cancer drugs that they don't use actual curcumin, but basically they took the chemical structure and they made a couple of alterations to it, to make it more potent and have different like anti-cancer properties. But the actual molecule of curcumin is a very like benefit. It has a ton of benefits. It's just the main issue with humans is its bioavailability. But if you make a few tweaks in the molecular structure, you can do a lot of stuff with it. But of course, if you make those tweaks, it's now considered a drug, and it's not, not like an actual supplement. That's the only issue on the supplement side.
Yeah, I remember, was it metformin was made from a plant originally, I believe, or developed from a plant.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's from my side. That's the main product I use. You're always skeptical, I guess. Well, like you always go, I don't know, I've used so much to know if it's going to work. But I think, going through a whole prep and we know what's involved in the prep, and to see, you improve by 30 points on an EGFR rating, you're like, okay,
yes,
well, that works.
Awesome. Yeah,
it works. Something that I wouldn't change. And there's a whole bunch of other products that I basically use your whole range well. There's probably, I think the only thing we can't get anymore is the GI Plus in New Zealand, which
the GI support, right?
GI support.
Yeah, they didn't like the bacteriophage in there. I think that's like a new regulation over there or something. So we didn't have issue with it before. It's weird.
No, they're always trying to ban something over it.
Is it a biologic? Is that why they don't want it?
Yeah. It's a bacteriophage. It's like some sort of like virus, basically, which will target like bad bacteria.
Gotcha.
Which it's not alive though, but yeah, they don't. And some people don't like that word. That is technically a virus, but it's a different kind of virus that bacteria specifically.
From talking to Jordan, isn't New Zealand super strict on supplements? That's what.
Depending, we are. It's difficult to say. Like in terms of on selling, like I work with Strom Sports in New Zealand, which is Strom UK, and we're very close with Leviathan, and sometimes it's quite hard to get things in the country, but it's mainly just paperwork and just making sure you fill in the right paperwork in. Sometimes when like a dispatcher, we had some guy from the UK dispatch something over to us and filled out the wrong forms, and then it causes a hold up in customs, and it's normally like 3 or 4 weeks, and you're going back and forth, and it's like, bloody hell, it's a pain. But we're nowhere near as strict as Australia, I would say. Australia is terrible for everything. Like you've got limitations of even caffeine and pre-workouts. There's so many things that you can't do. I've got family members in Melbourne, and you basically can't get anything.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and it's such a big country as well, and like even PEDs over there, that's
I know that's hard to get. I know my buddy got a kit of, I think it was just 1 kit of GH that like they caught, and they wanted to send him to prison for like a decade over there.
Yeah.
Oh, ridiculous.
Yeah, it's insane, and like if you're in New Zealand, and it's not like that, but it's just weird. Like it's weird behaviors, and they made can't remember her name. I think it was Hattie Boyle or something like that. She got put in the news and blasted for her house getting raided with PEDs all throughout her house. It's crazy. It's like they're selling heroin.
Yeah, it's insane. Well, I mean, it used to be nuts here too, man. I remember not like that anymore, but I don't know, what was it, 2003, 2004? I remember they came into my gym and hauled a bunch of guys off in handcuffs because they were just guys like selling stuff to each other.
Oh my God!
There was an undercover cop that busted them, and they hauled a bunch of guys out. I was waiting for them to put the cuffs on me, but they didn't. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, you don't normally get, but I think it's like anything. Like if you're selling in large quantities, then you're an idiot.
Yeah, I got you.
But if it's personal use, then you might get a slap on the hand and told not to do it. But it is what it is. I just find the world these days don't want men to be men, and they try and soften everyone. So that's what we see a lot of, which is a shame.
Yeah, I mean, here at least like we have like TRT clinics and stuff. Like being able to get prescribed testosterone is becoming a lot easier now with like telemedicine and stuff. But before 2020, it was pretty hard to get prescribed TRT. Your doctor wouldn't want to see your your total testosterone level is like below 200 or something, even if you have, even if you're older, you're having a bunch of symptoms. But then if you go tell them that you're a woman and you want to transition to a man, it's like, oh, here's some free testosterone for, here's a year's supply. Knock yourself out. It's like, what? That doesn't make any fucking sense.
We've got stupid things like Viagra. So, you can buy Viagra anywhere in the world, but over here you have to get it prescribed and you have to go through like symptoms and why you want it. And it's like, well,
okay.
It's technically a prescription here too, but
yeah,
I don't think they're as strict. I've never really seen anyone get busted for trying to import Viagra in from China or something.
And plus there's all these teledocs you can just call, make a phone call, and they'll give it to you.
Yeah, it's easier to get now.
It's just a gateway. Yeah, and I'm old as fuck. I'm 50. I've seen all the years and changes in PEDs in the 90s. It was just whatever some bro at the gym had. Most of the time we were just taking vet stuff. Like I remember whatever they were giving cows and shit. That's what we did.
Oh, the Phenoplex tabs, right?
I used to make the Phenoplex.
Yeah.
What could go wrong with melting pellets down with solvents and then injecting it into your body, right?
I've heard some great stories with those.
I can imagine how much that would be good.
I remember the first time I did it, I think I had the trend was just like super potent. It was like 2002. You used to be able to buy these kits online where you could take the pellets. You could buy it over you could go to the like farm store and buy the pellets just over the counter. And then you take them home, and there was this guy, I can't remember his name, that would sell all these kits, and he had all the solvents and stuff that you needed to dissolve the pellets and extract the hormone from it. And I remember the first time I made some, I don't know how powerful it was. I remember waking up the next day and I had like a 101, 102 degree fever, just from, I guess, the prostaglandin response to the, or maybe there's some bacteria in there. I don't know. And I remember I was just like, holy shit. Yeah, we used to do some crazy shit back in the day.
That's wild.
And then now you can get whatever you want.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they've got more stuff coming out, which can't keep up.
We didn't know what the hell we were doing back then. It was just like, as far as I knew, steroids were steroids in the 90s.
Yeah.
They were all the same.
When I started, it was, 2012, and it was like blogs and like you go at MD and Brutal Muscle, and there's like a few things around, but there wasn't much information. People weren't talking about it. Like, Jake Cutler would never mention anything, and now he talks about it, but you had no idea.
On the forums, I used to post on like MD, RX Muscle. No one would give you steroid advice unless you had the big three lifts, like unless you could bench 315 naturally, squat 405, and deadlift 5 plates or something. If anyone was not meeting that, they would make you post your lifting stats and like your height, your weight, and everything. Like if anyone didn't meet that, like they wouldn't give advice to them. But it's just so different now. You go on TikTok and there's 150-pound kids that are like, it's their first month in the gym and like they're on trend or something. It's so ridiculous.
I remember I used to model a couple of the boards back in the day on Intense Muscle, and some Muscle Mayhem was another one. But I remember we would talk in hypotheticals. We were like, well, your lab rat should take this. We were so paranoid. We were thinking that somehow was legally covering us by saying lab rat.
For us, it was just the local guy, and you just talk to them, and then you look at it now 10 years later and like, geez, this guy got me to take everything under the sun.
He was probably trying to sell you stuff.
Yeah. Sold it too, probably.
That's the thing, right? That's the thing. What we got about, 5 minutes left with you, Paul?
Yeah, 10, I'm good. I was just reminiscing on how stupid gear was. All the stupid shit we used to do. It's a wonder I made it to 50.
Dude, especially, I think when you were so young as well, you're like, you feel like you're invincible. And you're taking the stuff, you're like, I'm fine.
I mean, even tech, I started out in 2012 too. I was 22, 23. So like even, 10 years ago from now, it's like now I wouldn't, the only reason I'd use trend at this point would be like the end stages of a contest prep or something like that. It's like, and before, I'd love, I'd want to run trend and draw all that stuff. Like it makes you feel like invincible and all that shit. It's like now my cycle is just like test in primo. It's just very like anticlimactic, but it's also what works. It's not going to give you that crazy effect in the beginning, but it actually will lead to actual muscle that you can maintain in the long run. And that's the most important part of it.
It's funny how everybody eventually comes to the same conclusion. Like usually like beginner PED users, they're all using the stupid stuff. Like I got to try Tren, I got to try Anadrol,
you don't try it all.
DHB,
Superdrol.
You mistake side effects with effects. I'm like, man, I can feel I'm on this. This is really hitting me hard. And I'm like, no, that's just your blood pressure. It's 180 over 110.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's even like when you pick up growth hormone for the first time and you're like, oh, carpal tunnel. This is it's not me, man. Like it's waking up with numb arms. That's some picture feel.
Yeah. And then after you've been doing it for a while, you realize I want to actually maintain my health and keep the side effects as low as possible and leverage as much of the positive from it without the negative. It's funny, you talk to like guys that are old goats that are pro bodybuilders that have been pro bodybuilders for a while, and they almost all end up settling on test primo or masteron and GH. That's what they spend the majority of the year running. And then they'll occasionally run an oral, but it's for the most part, it's very, very limited and Tren only on contest prep.
Yeah, I think even like an oral, like anything past about Anavar is, I don't know, like Anavar does everything you kind of need if you want to use an oral. Like it's going to make you strong and you feel good on it and not, you're able to eat food. So if you were to add in some meat, like maybe just that, I wouldn't.
That's the issue I run into. Like I love Anadrol, man. Anadrol's fucking awesome, but 3 days into it, the acid reflux is so bad.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, my stomach, my appetite's completely gone, and I'm melting my esophagus. What's the acid reflux? This probably isn't good for me.
Yeah, whenever I use it, or like most orals, I think D-ball would kill my appetite the least. But yeah, any other orals, I can't use it on bulking because I can't eat enough. So
yeah, no, it's the same. I think that's the same thing I run into. Is I do like to use once in a blue moon. Like if I get somebody that has crashed estrogen, a little bit of D-ball might be good. But generally, Anavar, if I'm going to use an oral, that's what I'm going to run. Winstrol at the end of prep. There's some unique things it does with the mineral glucocorticoid receptor as far as washing water off and giving you that dry look that you really can't duplicate with anything else.
It's got some interesting effects on collagen production as well. Like there's some papers on how it basically prevents you from repairing collagen in your body. So that's why you get that thinner skin look, and which is it's an interesting product. Like I think for that final look, you can't.
It's also why my elbows feel like they're being stabbed with a butcher knife.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, there is that too, right? It's
most people I see have problems with it. Is they'll add that in, and they'll chuck in Halo on top of it, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm super strong," but I've got brittle elbows, and then I've torn something. That's what I see. Quite a combination.
Where you look at it, seriously, that's something that's always kind of aggravated me. Is when did most guys get hurt that are bodybuilders? It's at the end of prep. So, I don't know why anybody would be trying to set PRs at the end of prep. It's just a bad idea, man.
I think it's just a whole approach of maintaining your strength throughout your whole prep. And, there's influences like JP talks about that and stuff. And it's like, yeah, it's okay, man. But like 4 weeks out, like if you're going to get weaker, just accept it.
It's unpreventable.
Yeah. And I honestly, I've actually started to pull back when my training at the end of prep, and I think I honestly look better. Yeah, when I get on stage, I look fresher. I usually and I've been doing that with my clients too. I've been dialing training back on the last couple of weeks into the show, and I'll start hopefully I have them ready by about a week and a half, 2 weeks out, and then we can start putting a little bit of food back in, pushing the cardio down a bit, pulling the fat burners back a bit, and basically deload going into peak week, going into the show, just do some posing,
and then you
do
feel
some
amazing.
Pump work. Well, I mean, think about it. When do you always look the best?
Yeah, when you see
the week after a show.
Exactly.
Right? Right. I mean, it's usually 7-10 days after show. You're like, holy fuck! I wish I looked like this on stage.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I normally start adding an extra rest day in towards the back end of prep, and then just slowly taper my volume down, and that's it, and I feel great. And that last week, I'm happy, smiling, eating, not depleted, and you feel amazing. So
I don't know. You guys know who AJ Sims is?
Yep.
Yeah, AJ gets people shredded. Like he gets people harder and shredded more than anybody out there. And I kind of talked to AJ quite a bit this past year, and that's what he does. He has guys ready 2 weeks out, and he starts pulling everything back, pushing the food back up, and then he holds it was interesting, and this is what I did this year going into my show. He holds the orals until right at the end, and then he'll run a really high dose of Winstraw like the last 2 weeks. Like I ran 200 milligrams of Winstraw the last 10 days.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think people add in. I was just going to say, I think people add in Winstraw too early. Like, that year Nick tore his hamstring. If you listen to him, he added it in like 9 weeks out. And I'm like, well, no wonder you're going to tear something. Like you don't need it 9 weeks out. Like that's crazy.
Well, I don't do it. It's mostly just a cosmetic look. So you only need like a week for that to take effect, which not really a point in staying on that much longer.
Yeah. So if you run a high dose really hard at the end and then pull your training back, you end up with a better look and then fill back out. That was sort of his philosophy. I know John Jewett, he doesn't even run it at all. He just sticks with Anavar and maybe a little bit of Halo. Probably sometimes he'll even run Anadrol the last day or two to fill out.
Yeah, I think Anadrol can be good for fullness.
Yeah,
I think usually it's not going to cause you to retain water. Not like something like D-ball. It's not going to aromatize in that way. I mean, it'll have to depend on the person, but I tried running that for my last show and it helped. I mean, I was still way over dieted, but probably something I'd try again.
Yeah, I think if you need to fill out a little bit the last day or two, it's a tool you can keep in the toolbox.
Yeah.
Even growth hormone is the same. Like I think keeping growth hormone is beneficial that last day. That's sort of my approach. Like I'd like to keep, if you're in shape, obviously, and you're lean. Yeah. If you're not, then pull it. But
yeah, I usually flatten out when I pull the growth hormone out. Although this year I pulled it out I pulled out 3 days out, and then I did a really aggressive carb load. We did a fill and spill this year where I was loading something like 2,500 grams of carbs over a 48-hour period with insulin. And then we cleaned it up with a diuretic going into the show. I mean, that's kind of the old Chad Nichols approach. When it works great. And when it doesn't work, you end up looking like Big Ramy did at his last Olympia.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think as well, you were pretty much almost ready like 6 weeks out.
Yeah. Well, the issue with the fill and spill, it's sort of a Hail Mary pass because once you throw the diuretic in, you can start flattening out and you end up with that flat and soft look that like happened to Big Ramy and some guys. I'd be curious I've talked to some people that have worked with him, what Hani Rambat does, because he seems to have the most consistency with how guys look. I'd heard, I don't know, he doesn't use insulin at all with peaking guys, and he's less aggressive with the carb up going into the show. And I had also heard that he has guys go get colonics the day before shows to clear out their stomach and does very little food on show day.
Yeah, I can see that. I think he gets sometimes a bit of a bad rep because they always say, he's got these genetic elites, but I'm like, if it 30 years or something he's done it, and all of them have won.
Well, even the genetic guys, the freaks, you can look at Samson. He's never fully nailed his peak, right? This year was probably the closest he's been.
Yeah.
But it seems like Hani, his guys never miss.
Right. Even this last year, like Derek was a little off, but not by much.
I mean, I was there. I mean, he still looked great, but I mean, I think he just looked like maybe he was tired on prep or whatever. I don't know. Yep. Just his body didn't respond as well. I mean, he still got third. Yeah. So
third. He looked a lot better on finals to me.
Yeah.
Prejudging, I saw him I don't know. There's a big difference between prejudging and finals. So
that Olympia was screwball. The lighting was terrible. Everything was running late.
Those strobe lights killed me.
I was there
that last year too. It's so annoying. I don't know why they keep doing that.
Well, you were there, Logan. You saw it, man. It was terrible in person.
It was so bad. you're sitting in the audience and then this big light just hits you in the face. You're like, I want to see the guys on stage. Like, I want to see this light. But yeah.
The Arnold's great. Every year they put on, they do it right there.
Yeah. We're looking at going to the Arnold.
I'll be there. Yeah. We have a booth.
Oh, cool.
That was more expensive than the Olympia booth.
Yeah. Jesus booth. Yeah. Cool, man. Will anything else from your side before we shoot?
No, appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys, and we'll talk later.
Yeah, man. No, thanks again, Paul. I'll be in touch.